being here today. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the new Chicago Innovation Exchange, and we're excited about our panel. The focus of today's discussion is going to be the future of clean energy in the Midwest. And joining me today on the panel, I'm very excited to be joined by an esteemed group of panelists that represent many different parts of this burgeoning ecosystem that we see here in the Midwest and also across the country. So to my left, I'm joined by David Danielson, who's the Assistant Secretary for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy for the Department of Energy. Amy Francetic, CEO of the Clean Energy Trust. Mark Peters, the Associate Laboratory Director for Energy and Global Security Directorate at Argonne National Laboratory. Samir Mayekar is the CEO of SiNode, a company here in Chicago. And Len Quadracci, who is an Enterprise Technology Strategy Executive at the Boeing Company. So welcome and thank you very much for joining us for this panel today. The format of the panel will be as follows. I would like to try to open up with a couple of context comments around clean tech in the Midwest, set the stage for what will then follow as brief introductions by the individuals that are sitting before you that can talk a little bit about their backgrounds and their role in the ecosystem. And then we'll move quickly to question and answer. So I'll start the Q&A process, but if I'm a successful moderator, then it will be determined because we are creating a dialogue. What I hope to be able to do is have balanced conversation amongst the panelists and create enough curiosity within the crowd for you to ultimately ask some questions and gain some insight regarding the topics that we're going to cover today. So that's the format. What I'd like to do now is just kind of set the stage. If you look at where we are right now, we're in the Chicago Innovation Exchange. We're in the city of Chicago. We're a place where we, within the city, can be a hub and community around energy innovation, as well as other healthcare innovation, things happening in computation and other business creation here on the south side of the city. But we tie into a broader ecosystem here in Chicago. We work very closely with our national labs, Argonne National Laboratory, Fermilab, and other research institutions, Northwestern, University of Illinois, and others that we have around the city. And then more broadly, we're very blessed in the Midwest to have great corporations, a startup ecosystem that's brewing up, and greater needs in the marketplace for new kinds of technologies in the renewable energy space. So it's a very exciting time for the city, but I think it's also an exciting time for entrepreneurship and innovation across the country. There is a burgeoning desire by our next generation of students and faculty who want to be empowered to start a business around their idea, bring their idea out to the world. And so places like the Chicago Innovation Exchange and others like 1871 in digital tech and the Garage at Northwestern are facilitating and supporting the build-out of the skill base required to bring those ideas to the marketplace. What I'm going to do now is allow each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, and if you could just comment briefly on your role in this developing ecosystem here locally and nationally. Dr. Danielson?
Well, thanks so much. This is such an exciting space, isn't it? That I want to come be an entrepreneur here. Especially that bar downstairs.
We've got a place in the bar.
So I'm Dave Danielson. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy. My office is the largest applied research development demonstration deployment office within the DOE. We focus on three primary sectors: sustainable transportation, renewable power and its integration into the grid, and end-use efficiency. And in a growing sense, we're spending a lot of time and effort on grid modernization and on clean energy manufacturing competitiveness. Those two areas we're spending a lot of time. And so my office invests about $1.9 billion this year into innovation in clean energy, all the way from early stage applied R&D to the far end of deployment, where we actually we put in place appliance standards for your refrigerator and your other appliances. So we're kind of a soup to nuts comprehensive organization, playing the appropriate high impact government role, trying to really push American leadership in the clean energy economy. We invest about, the DOE, the Department of Energy, invests about $600 million a year into Argonne National Laboratory. And so we make significant innovation investments there every year. My office alone invested about $70 million into the lab. About half of that is in the vehicle technologies area. And so, I was actually got a chance to tour the lab yesterday. There is no doubt that Argonne National Lab in the Chicago area is the global hub for battery innovation. And that's an area where we're investing quite a bit, including a 5-year, $120 million energy storage hub that's completely focused on beyond lithium-ion technology, the technology beyond what we have in our phones. But at the same time, my office is investing, more than $10 million a year into a sustained innovation on lithium-ion technology. And Mark will probably talk a little bit about it, but the Chevy Bolt battery is actually invented through DOE funding by the lab. And we expect the next generations of batteries that are going to get into cars are probably going to come out of the lab as well. But we're also having innovation for next generation engines and materials. There are engine concepts that are 30% more efficient in the lab at Argonne right now that need to find their pathway to market. We also work with Argonne on a number of other opportunities. We also made significant investments in helping support this, what I see as this exciting embryonic growing community, this ecosystem that you have around energy innovation that includes, I think, the exchange here, Clean Energy Trust, the Clean Energy Challenge business plan competition you have, and a wide and an exciting variety of, I think, of ecosystem activities you have, where we provided a seed grant a few years back to help the Clean Energy Trust get some national effort. And so, one last thing I'll mention is that it's not all technology. Actually, we had a great success with the city of Chicago recently, where we invested in a partnership between utilities and the city and others here, where we were able to, as a team, reduce the permitting time for rooftop solar from 30 days all the way down to 1 day. And so, whether it's innovation at Argonne National Labs, investing in the ecosystem here, or investing in the community's effort to try to deploy more renewable power and clean energy, we're very engaged with the ecosystem here. The three of us were on Chicago Tonight last night. We don't have any makeup on, we're sorry.
Speak for yourself.
But the last thing I'll say that I said last night is that, the places that are kind of the exciting place to be, the emerging regional powerhouses as it relates to clean energy innovation. So I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks.
Thank you. Amy?
Well, thank you so much, John, for including us, and we are really excited partners with the University of Chicago, Argonne, the U.S. Department of Energy with Chicago, and the intent is to make, through technology and scaling up of technology, to positively impact the environment and health of future generations. We're fortunate to have the support not only of the Department of Energy, who granted us $1 million back in 2010, which really helped launch the Clean Energy Trust. We have the support of our board of directors, some of the city's most distinguished civic leaders, like Nick Pritzker and Michael Polsky, who's a big supporter of the university here as well. And now we have over different corporations, investors, universities, and foundations that support our work. So when this grant came up very recently from the Department of Energy, the NICE grant, it was a national incubator grant, and we partnered with Next Energy in Detroit to propose how we could support an incubator that stretched between our region and Detroit. And we got a lot of support from John to support this facility, which I am completely blown away by. We've seen it at all different stages of development, and it is just drop dead gorgeous. So I don't know who wouldn't want to have a space here. I mean, we will have office hours here. Clean Energy Trust, we have our office in the loop, but we will be coming here on a regular basis to support the students and the companies that are here. And to coach them and prepare them for fundraising. That will be our primary goal. And also introductions to companies where we can be helpful to get traction for these early companies. But when we proposed on the NICE grant, there's so many cool spaces in Chicago now that didn't exist when we started 4 years ago that we didn't want to create another one. You guys are doing it better than anybody. So we wanted only to support the ones that were here. And as you guys know, in the energy space, a lot of these entrepreneurs have very special needs for their businesses. So I love how high-tech this space is. I love how close it is to the university. I love how it's helping to revitalize the whole 53rd Street corridor. I mean, I think that's an amazing economic development accomplishment that the university and the city should be very proud of. And I know Samir is going to talk too, but we're very proud because Samir is a great example, as is Andrea from Luminate, who's in the crowd, of two companies that we worked with through our Clean Energy Challenge, and they are just leading examples of what we're trying to accomplish. They're hiring people, they're creating jobs. In Illinois, there are over 97,000 clean energy jobs, which is more than the accounting and the real estate industry combined. And all this new job growth is coming from small businesses, less than 10 people. And in the United States, all of the net new job growth the last 30 years has come from small businesses that are less than 5 years old. So that's part of the effect. That's a little hard to see company by company, but when you count these numbers as a whole, you see how important it is that the 5 or 10 jobs these small companies are contributing annually, and a little bit of money goes a long way to getting some of these high-tech jobs created and filled. We think that's going to be making that's our goal, is to sort of stimulate that part of the economy and make not only the environment healthier, but to share the prosperity for everyone in the region.
Thanks, John. I actually think I still have makeup on, Dave. I just went like this, and there's still powder. So she said it won't be much. I mean, so I shouldn't have any shine. Do you see me shine? Yeah, right. So I also want to. I actually walked this space very, very early on, and I was telling Amy before. I think we both shared this disability that you can't envision something when it's finished. I have that on my wife wasn't about that when I walked the house. But this is incredible.
Yes, bravo.
It's incredible. So again, I'm the associate laboratory director for energy and global security at Argonne National Laboratory. So I think everybody probably knows this. Argonne's a national laboratory. We actually sit just outside of the city, actually in DuPage County, just outside of the county line. And we, as Dave said, we do a wide range of science and technology, starting from very basic science, material science, chemistry, physics, medium energy physics, high energy physics, for discovery, fundamental science, but also do a lot of use-inspired science for solving energy challenges, and quite a bit of applied R&D work focused on energy, national security, global security. Just for context, the Directorate, there's a few folks sitting in the room who I work with closely. My Directorate is basically the applied research and development directorate for the laboratory. So the majority of the work that Dave sponsors at the lab funnels through my area in transportation, a good bit of battery work. And so there's lots of opportunities to engage the lab. But the context that I want to provide is, and it's related to the history of this facility actually, and the sort of the genesis of this facility. One of the things that the lab's been thinking about very deeply, really for the last 5 years in particular, is how does the lab imagine being part of what we were hoping was going to be a really cool ecosystem, and it is. And so we actually were working very closely with the University of Chicago as the managing contractor for the lab from our inception in 1946. And so we're always talking to the university, and with President Zimmer in particular, with his leadership, we got into some very strategic conversations about how does the lab do a better job of being part of what I'll call the Chicago lab ecosystem. And one of the manifestations is we're going to have a very strong presence here. Dave mentioned a Joint Center for Energy Storage Research that will have a prominent role here. And so we were talking a lot about how does Argonne fit into this regional ecosystem. At the same time, we were thinking about this battery center. So it all kind of came together in a really interesting and really kind of cool way. So I think we're a lot further along than we were now. We talked about this last night. Chicago land has all the right ingredients: 2 national labs, great universities, great business schools, great incubators, support from the government, federal, state, and local. So I think it's a great time to have this conversation, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Samir?
Hi, everybody. My name is Samir Mayekar. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SiNode Systems. And before I tell you what we do, I actually want to take a poll. So, who here is satisfied with their smartphone's battery life? Raise your hand. Okay, nobody. Second question: who here owns an electric vehicle? Nobody. Okay, one person. Saeed does. So that's those are 2 things we want to change. So we're an advanced materials company. What we do is we make. I'm a product guy, so I always like to do show and tell. We make a battery material, this is hard to see, but it's based on a composite of two amazing materials, silicon and graphene. These materials help improve the battery's energy density and also allow it to charge faster. So we sell these materials to companies that make batteries, and they're able to then get more customers and improve the device's performance. And I'm particularly happy to be here because my company is a product of everyone sitting at this table in the ecosystem. So we actually, the research that created this company came out of a collaboration between Mark and his team at Argonne and Northwestern, which was federally funded. We spun out of the university and first incorporated to participate in the Clean Energy Challenge that Amy sponsored. We got our first break and closed our angel investment round after we won Dr. Danielson's Clean Energy Business Plan competition. And last week, we made our first sale into the military and aerospace industry, which, you know, Boeing is a company here in Chicago, and we work actively in that industry. So we're really proud to be part of this ecosystem and a testament to what, you know, innovation and small businesses can do. In the past year, we've hired 10 people. We've only been around a year, so I'm excited about what we'll do over the course of 2015.
I'm Len Quadracci, and I work for Boeing. I'm part of Boeing Research and Technology. And specifically, I work for an organization called Strategy and Innovation. And the goal of Strategy and Innovation is to look for next square opportunities for Boeing so we can grow. For non-obvious, non-core opportunities. So, because Boeing is changing, right? We want to be around in the next 100 years. And the way we need to be around is to be innovative and to look for new opportunities to improve our products or to develop new products or areas where we can leverage our strength and move into. So where does Boeing fit in the clean tech area? Well, first of all, in our facilities, Boeing is a huge consumer of energy, just to manufacture airplanes, composites, and so we're very aggressive in using clean energy. Our New Charleston facility is all solar cells. The roofs are covered in solar cells. We use wind power in our Oregon, Portland area. And then the second area that's very critical to us is that our customers, because I like to say that if you figure out what's Boeing's core competency, our core competency is anti-gravity. Right? If it's a product that fights gravity, probably Boeing is in that business, right? So we're talking spacecraft, military airplanes, commercial airplanes, even some of our stuff in shipping areas. It really all kind of boils down to anti-gravity, and anti-gravity requires a lot of energy, and to be able to do that, we are very interested in supporting renewable energy so that we have choices on how we can apply the energy that we have to make our products for our customers go forward. So we're a significant investor and supporter in biofuels and throughout the world, either through algae or plantings. And we'll continue to be in that area because it's of interest. So we're probably not a driver in the clean energy, but we're a large consumer of clean energy, and our customers are large consumers of clean energy. So we want to make sure that our products are compatible with the technologies that you guys are producing. So that's important. So we may not be right up in front in terms of it, but we definitely are behind in terms of ready to gather these technologies that are available and incorporate them into our products to make our products a whole lot better. And I guess the last way that's important to us is that Boeing in itself is potentially a great teammate in terms of capabilities in the aerospace business to help you mature your products, your technologies, and get them over to the next step. There's a large, we always talk about the valley of death, right? And to me, it's really the valley of manufacturing death. Because it's really easy to make something that works with ones or twos or threes, but when you try to get it to work at scale, and you get it to work for a long time, that's where Boeing can maybe add some expertise in terms of helping you figure out how to make something more manufacturable and more applicable to the end users that are going out there. So we're always looking for opportunities to help out in that side of it. So that goes through there. So I'm a little bit of an outside-in looking to this organization because I'm from Seattle, but I've got great roots in the Pacific in the Midwest. I was actually born in Milwaukee, so I have family still in Milwaukee, and great opportunity and love the space. She had no problem recruiting, and I feel sorry for Starbucks down the road because in Seattle, the high-tech industry always needs Starbucks, right? Because they're everywhere, right? So you get there, and I think that the Starbucks down the road is going to take a hit because of this facility. So I'm a little bit worried about that. So
caffeine with a shot of innovation.
Exactly, it's the way it is.
Well, that's a great segue. So I think we've demonstrated that we have a very balanced panel, representing different parts of this ecosystem, whether you want to think about locally or even nationally. And maybe setting the tone for this, I might turn to Dr. Danielson first and ask you, where does renewable energy fit in today, and where is it going? Maybe talk a little bit about the market dynamics and why is it important? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like even a few years ago, it still felt like clean energy was kind of still 20, 30 years into the future. But what's funny is I think it's kind of like clean energy just got cheap while you weren't looking, right? And so we've seen dramatic cost reductions in solar power in recent years, where modules are being sold for 70 cents a watt, something like that. I just read in the newspaper yesterday that Georgia Power was procuring solar power about 6 cents per kilowatt hour. So that means it's probably around 8 to 10 without the subsidy. And so basically solar's almost arrived, right? Wind is in the same camp. And so I think we still need a lot of innovation on both solar materials, on wind turbine designs, on new batteries. Battery costs come down like crazy. And so I think that the way I would kind of put it is, and in upstate New York and all around the country. And so I think we still need to keep pushing, but I do see kind of the next 5 to 10 years a surprisingly wide array of kind of clean energy and energy efficient products are going to be directly cost competitive without subsidies. It's going to be true for LEDs, it's going to be true for electric vehicles, solar, wind, and a wide variety of other technologies. So I think we need to keep pushing innovation, but one thing I throw out as a theme that is maybe of interest as innovators and entrepreneurs is that although we need to continue to innovate in materials and widgets, devices for sure, I think what we're coming to now is the importance of evolving our thinking to just widgets into systems. And so, I think there's this huge opportunity for innovation, let's say, on the truly smart grid. People talk about the smart grid. It's usually you have a meter that's kind of just broadcasting the monthly bill, so that the utility guy doesn't have to get up his truck, right? That's not the flying car that we were all promised, right? So, but where we really need to go is real-time markets in time and space for every electricity consuming and generating device that's on the grid. And we don't have the technology to do that today. We don't have the physical technology. We don't have the information technology. We don't have the controls technology. And so I think that although we do need to keep innovating on materials and devices to make sure that we do get to cost competitive clean energy without subsidies in the next 5 to 10 years, I think that we're all going to need to evolve our thinking a little bit from the widgets that have always been the long pole in the tent to other issues like systems, soft costs, and those kind of issues. And so I think as clean energy arrives in many ways, I think that the number of business opportunities in clean energy is multiplying dramatically. And so those are just a couple of themes, I think, just to throw out that I think are
That's helpful. And building on that, Mark, maybe could you elaborate a little bit? It seems that also kind of in parallel to this, Argonne and national labs, there seems to be an increased appetite around commercializing a lot of the innovation that's coming out of the laboratories, and maybe a renewed push to try to do that. Is that related to this, arriving sooner than early trend that David is talking about? And maybe if you could just provide a little bit more.
So we've actually, even in the previous administration, with Secretary Chu, there was an active conversation about it. But now, particularly with Secretary Moniz and Dave and his role, and I don't want to steal Dave's thunder, but he's actively working with the labs to put mechanisms, I'll call it mechanisms in place for us to be able to increase our impact. But also the labs were very much self-starting on this. We were thinking a lot about, at the lab director level, we're thinking very hard about, okay, how do we increase our impact? So things like thinking through how we can not only get out of our own way in some cases. In some cases, we actually don't do as effective job as we need to as labs. It's easy to blame someone else, but we should look at ourselves. We just, just revamping our ability to actually work with industry. There's a bit of a cultural divide between the labs and industry, right? So industry has, in many cases, near-term requirements, and lab researchers have a hard time sometimes fitting into that sort of, let's say, quarterly, annual basis. So the incentives have to be better aligned. We also have to do a better job of listening to industry. Instead of just pushing everything, oh, we've got this great widget, surely you can use it. Here you go.
Well, and maybe Samir can talk about the role of the entrepreneur in that.
Yeah, and so there's all those things that I think that it's definitely an evolution in the labs. It's in progress.
Any comments on the role of the entrepreneur and translate? So seeing things coming out and saying there's an opportunity, I want to take it forward. Can you walk us through a little bit about your story? What got you started? What got you motivated? To the extent that there are other students and entrepreneurs in the room, talk about the things that you saw as opportunities. But what were the barriers or challenges that you saw in taking your idea forward?
Sure. I mean, we're still tackling barriers every day, right? That's your life as an entrepreneur. So we got our start at Northwestern. Our whole team originally was kind of bonded by this common desire to not only become entrepreneurs, but become entrepreneurs in the energy space and to actually manufacture something. So, we're not software people. We really wanted to focus on a manufacturing-oriented technology. So that was in our DNA, and I think that's really important as entrepreneurs, that you're all on the same page with the type of company you want to create. So we took a class that combined PhDs from the McCormick School of Engineering. I was, at the time, getting my MBA at Kellogg, and this kind of nexus between all of us allowed us to find this technology in the lab, both because of what Argonne was doing and what Northwestern was doing. And then we spun it out by winning a couple business plan competitions. And also we got our first break by the SBIR program, if you're familiar with that. So I would say that the biggest challenges to entrepreneurs in this space, number one is finding financing. You have to beg, borrow, steal, do whatever you can do to be scrappy, and it's getting harder if you're in the energy space. You have to look at more non-traditional sources of capital.
So why is that? So we're on one hand, it's a contrast to what you're saying. So the clean energy markets are beginning to accelerate. There seems to be things on the horizon. So why is financing as difficult as it is? Amy, do you have any comments there?
Absolutely. Well, it's because there's so little money available for these early risky companies in the Midwest. So we've been tracking this since we were born, and in the last 14 years across 9 states in the Midwest, only on average $5 million a year have gone into energy companies. Seed capital. Seed capital is starting businesses. And so it shows that you've got this amazing research. We have over $1 billion of federally funded energy research that comes into the labs and universities, but that money to sort of help suck the companies out to support Samir in the spin out of his company is very hard to find. And then what you've also had happen in the last 5 years is this serious contraction in the global clean tech venture space as well. So a lot of the big funds that played really early had a lot of their capital locked up, so they weren't able to go raise additional rounds from their LPs. They were sitting on, waiting on these investments to mature and to pay back. So you had this sort of global contraction that occurred as well. And we just feel really strongly these are the most important problems that need to be solved today. For my benefit, for your benefit, for my kids' benefit, for future generations, way more important than social media, way more important than apps, way more important than any of the sort of what I would call less difficult problems that are being solved. And I think Peter Thiel had a great comment on this too. Like the flying cars. His quote: he wanted flying cars, and he got 144 characters. So this is. We just feel really strong that the capital needs to move into this space, and you have to get really diversified sources. You need angel capital, people that are willing to use. The point of our NICE grant was to this Clean Tech Innovation Bridge that we launched with the support of the City of Chicago and World Business Chicago is meant to go out and find the big customers, the big corporations, and identify what their pain points are, so you really get a strong market perspective. And so we got Exelon, Invenergy, and Schneider Electric to help us in this first phase, and document those needs, and then go find solutions to those needs. And Samir participated in a version of this that occurred with the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition, But that's sort of a market pull, too. So I think then pointing the scientists, and we're hoping that we'll also identify needs that the researchers can address. So we want to go not just looking at the entrepreneurs, but all the way into the labs. So we might be able to bridge a sponsored research relationship between the corporations and the labs. We might just be able to give advice to the scientists to help them know this is really, you're thinking about, half a dozen different applications for this technology. Pick the one where we're going to have the least friction getting into market, maybe an early, fast customer. So I think really listening to the market, and that mirrors also that the strategic investors at corporations have picked up some of the slack that the traditional venture capitalists have left behind as they sort of, moved a little bit to the sidelines.
So,
Yeah, can I just jump in on there? So, because I'll tell you all a story of kind of what I hear every day, right? Because I go out and fundraise every day. That's my life. And you're a former venture capitalist. Here's what they say. They say, I could invest $10 million in your company and make a concentrated risk and maybe not see the return I want or know that this technology will work for another 5 to 7 years. Or I could invest $1 million in 10 companies making apps, and I might have the next WhatsApp, I might have the next Tumblr, I might have the next Instagram. And so they say, my investors want me to take that risk, not the risk that's the hard science. And so given that reality, that's the reality of 2014, it's not going to change. Entrepreneurs and people in the community have to think of alternate ways. And I think the alternate way is to find a new type of capital, to use the government funding that exists. And also, we partner with Merck Chemicals and a bunch of other big companies because they play the long game. Boeing wants to be here in 100 years. That you need, Snapchat is not going to get you your 100 years of innovation, but the types of science that we all do will.
Well, and then one other point is that Fortune 500 companies' lives have shrunk. So they used to be, 20 years ago, the average lifespan of a Fortune 500 company was 34 years. It's 14 years today. So the Fortune 500s are really motivated to invest in those technologies of the future, and they're of course limited to their, to their own portfolios and their own business relationships in terms of what they're looking for. But I think that is a really critically important thing. I think that the corporations are motivated to adopt a lot of these.
So it makes sense on paper, but Len, you are the market. I mean, you're a consumer, but tell me about what's driving you. What do you think?
Yeah. So if you decide to approach a large company with a great idea, my recommendation is there's a couple of things. One is that you don't come for the money, right? That you say, what's in it that Boeing has that you need, that we can give you that isn't money, right? So if it's a facility or it's a wind tunnel or it's something where we can contribute something other than cash to helping your product go, and we'll get alignment that way, so you won't have to pay for it to kind of go forward. And especially if it's some kind of expertise where by contributing that expertise and that capability, we help each other, right, to move forward. So there's lots of opportunities, either from facilities, labs, customer access, pilots, studies. There's that will get you a lot farther in the door with Boeing or with other specific companies, because in a sense you create an alignment. You're not coming for cash. When you come for just cash, then you're competing against everybody else who knocks on Boeing's door trying to sell products. And there's a lot of people trying to do it that way. So in this space, it'd be really difficult to actually be able to sell by knocking on the door that way. But it'd be a lot easier to say, I have this product and you have this capability. If we can put those together, and we can then test it at your Charleston facility, right? And measure some performance. And I know that will help you a lot, because you'll be able to say, we actually have real performance for my product. And that's what the VCs want, right? They want to see, I'll invest in it when you can have some concrete examples on what the performance and the value to your customer is in the real world. We can trade you the value metrics, right, that you need to go to your VCs to go forward and get more money and to grow, and get you through the valley of death, right?
What draws Boeing in, though? What's the thing that's attractive? Do you feel like you need to access that innovation, or is it something you feel like you can already do on your own?
Oh no, we're always looking for the innovation. Our chairman has pushed over and over again. There's $1 trillion of research and development going out in the world, and Boeing's a small fraction of that, right? So we're actively always looking for and to tap into great ideas that are like this. I spend most of my life looking for opportunities for Boeing that are just outside the normal core to bring in and find ways. But I'm not going to. It doesn't make sense for me to directly fund stuff, right? Because it's too much of a dilution of that kind of investment. But it's very easy in terms of cooperation. We like to work with it, right? I love working with the labs. Boeing is a big supporter of the labs. And it's not because we like the labs. It's because of the capabilities that the labs give us that we don't have to replicate in our own areas, right? And so it's the same thing with universities. It's the same thing with small businesses.
One question I'd love to throw out is I think one thing we've definitely learned in our experience with national labs is the more they rub shoulders with industry and understand what the real world needs are, the more they can invent toward those needs.
Yes.
And so it's just as innovative an idea as they would have had, maybe, but if it's informed by the application, then it's much more impactful and exciting. And I also think with this national network of clean tech incubators that we want to build, one idea or vision would be, could a few really leading, innovative, industrial companies like yours provide some brand challenge to the community that says, if you can make this, I want it. And to what extent are those publishable versus something that would need to be more of a quiet conversation? How many of those challenges are obvious enough that you'd be willing to put them out there versus how many are the kind of things where you'd only want to talk to someone after you have a 10-year successful productive relationship where you really trusted that they wouldn't leak out even the definition of your problem?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time worrying about that, and there's a lot of golden bolts, right, that Boeing has, critical technologies that we don't share even inside the Boeing company, right? So once we identify what those things are, it's unlikely that we would share those, and so those probably are the ones you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think clean energy is not one of those. Okay, we are completely open on our desire for biofuels and helping industries. We're actually working hard to set up an ecosystem that supports our products through clean energy. So this is a great example of, in terms of your question, to get you the right answer, right? Which is yes, Boeing would potentially be interested if we could come up with this, if we could consortium. We also don't want to be, though, the problem with the X prizes or for reducing chemical investments for chemicals we're trying to get rid of, which is another big thing. Is there's a lot of them that are regulatory push, and it's tough for Boeing to do heavy lifting in an area that everybody else just gets for free, right? So it's kind of a challenge there to figure out how we can invest in this and get us a competitive advantage. And yet in clean energy, in a sense, we'll be helping everybody. But so there's a little bit of a tension.
Can you give an example of what you meant by what everybody gets for free?
Like if we were to come up with a chromium paint replacement, right? We want to get it out. We don't need to spray it. It's bad for the environment. There's a mandate to get rid of it from the right, but nobody's actually come up with a solution that works really well, right? So Boeing goes and puts $1 billion to chromium paints. We'll come up with a solution, but then Airbus gets it for free, right? And that's $1 million or $1 billion that we didn't invest in manufacturing efficiency or something else. So we have to be really careful in where we focus our specific investments in this area.
I think that's a great example of a problem I didn't even know of. And if I were an innovator, wanting to do, to think about how I can apply my cool new nano whatever to a problem, if that was one of 20 problems I was aware of that has industrial relevance, I might actually get after it. So I think there's an opportunity to define more important problems and connect them to the innovation.
The notion of an exchange. Yeah, you're broadcasting a problem, and there are people out there in the ecosystem that could, rationally.
Yeah, you've got to attack it. I mean, as Dave alluded to, you've got to attack it in different ways, right? You can have 3-day workshops with a big company and exchange needs and requirements, but then there's the follow-through is always the most important thing. And we've done some of those, and I would say we've had success. But then there's also building a long-term relationship at the individual level as well, having folks move back and forth. I think that should be a goal for the labs to be able to do a better job of having to.
Can you comment on the culture in Argonne and kind of what is, do you see it changing? One of the observations I've made kind of universally is there's kind of this next generation of students and younger faculty, younger PIs that are hungry to try to commercialize their idea. They almost a hubris around entrepreneurship and what that means. To some degree, maybe that was brought on by the Great Recession and how it's pressured our next generation to think about their future and be prepared almost with a Swiss Army knife encapsulated in the skin of an entrepreneur for the future, at least believing that. To what extent is the culture changing at Argonne as it thinks about, and how does that potentially enable more interactions with industry?
That's a great question. I have to I sort of feel like I'm on the battlefield, so it's kind of hard to get a perspective. I would say it's not moving nearly as fast as I think we in lab leadership wanted it to do 5 years ago. We imagined trying to put some incentives in place that would help move the culture, so that people their incentives weren't just publish a great paper, which is really, really important. I should also say that we've got a very, I'll call it science culture, and that's in part because the University of Chicago's had that relationship from our inception, and you never want to lose that. So the balance you have to strike is that great science culture that produces incredible quality, while also thinking about being able to work with industry and other things. So I'd say it's sort of moving slowly, but your point about different generations, I'm actually starting to see I would say a phase shift with the postdocs. And that's what we're seeing and we're actively talking about, the postdocs want to get out, they want to go be judges in Amy's competitions, right. And they're doing it, actually. Yeah. And so if we can figure out how to enable that, and then those postdocs in many cases, in our case, are actually pipeline for future staff.
Totally. So,
and also, if you want to keep the postdocs here, right? You want the brain drain thing going on, where they go to the posts, keep them here. And so I think that's where you're going to see the phase shift, is with the new generation versus pushing, I would say, the existing.
David, can you maybe comment on, sorry, I didn't cut you off, Amy, but could you comment then, you use the word, Mark, incentives, so maybe at the policy level and kind of how do we incentivize this shift to some degree? Are there any programs you're working on that you might be able to talk about, or we might be able to glean some information around that is indicating a direction around providing some incentives for entrepreneurs to move in this direction, or postdocs or MBAs to move downstream?
Well, one thing that I'll observe about our national laboratories is they really are, it's really science in service of the nation, and when they're called upon to do something for this nation, they're ready to do it. And so I think what you've seen from the president, the secretary, and myself, I think we're all making the call loud and clear that we want the national laboratories to be in service of clean energy commercialization in U.S. competitiveness. And I think that they've always been playing that role, but I think sometimes we're getting some mixed signals from their leadership. I think it's now loud and clear. Around the labs and in other parts of the country, we have directed our leaders at DOE to support more industry to get them to work together, identify a really high impact problem the lab could work with you on, and get small businesses in the door, get that relationship going. We're also launching, and we'll be announcing the awardees in the next week or so, a brand new program inspired by an NSF program that we're launching called LabCorp, which I think is totally aligned with what this ecosystem is doing. It's really an entrepreneurial training program where a national lab researcher who has kind of a big new platform idea, which you often don't know where the business opportunity is yet, we'll go through a commercialization training program with a mentor, an industry mentor, an entrepreneurial mentor, and really go through, with a whole cadre of colleagues, go through the process of trying to figure out whether technology could best be applied that could result in a startup, like it does at NSF, or it could result in an industry agreement, which I think the labs have a much broader spectrum of commercialization outcomes. And then another program that we're launching is we're supporting a technologist in residence program where we want to support exchange of researchers from major industrial corporations and the labs to get to know each other, to get to know capabilities, to build trust, so that we can really have that shoulder rubbing and relationship building, so that I think the better the relationship is and the more trusting the relationship with a company like Boeing, the more they're willing to share the more important idea, which is the one that we'd love to be having an impact on.
Yes.
I just wanted to comment on the postdocs and how critical they are, and I'm glad that Dr. Danielson mentioned all these cool programs that the ERE group are coming up with to support this, but we see, Argonne has 300 postdocs a year, and many of them come from other areas, and we love to keep them here. I think the more that we can create some kind of opportunity for them to get involved with a startup, or to be match-made with somebody that has a cool idea and they can start to build that business here, that's a really, really critical talent pool that we need to engage and solidify in Chicago. That is really going to make a big difference in taking our ecosystem to the next stage. And I just want to say that entrepreneurship is absolutely teachable. You guys are doing a great job here at University of Chicago in the Booth School. Kellogg and Northwestern Mike Marasco's program is top-notch in the nation for helping to produce amazing entrepreneurs and rivals Stanford and MIT in what they're accomplishing on the national level. So it's absolutely teachable, and we have all these resources. So I think that this should become a focal point moving forward. Young people, especially postdocs, they're like at the best point in your life to take these risks. Also, it's like I have 2 kids and a mortgage, and also you really want to get people before they have all of those other things like weighing them down and preventing them from taking the risk. So, and I think we need to accept failure. That's the other thing is I spent 20 years in Silicon Valley. I grew up here. I went to Stanford. I worked in the high-tech industry. All the friends that I had that really made it, the Sergey Brins and the Mark Zuckerbergs were, 1 in a gazillion. But there was we had a strong pool of friends that were in their 40s that did it, tried 3 or 4 or 5 times, and it was their endurance to try again and again, and, not to do anything illegal, not to do anything fraudulent. You still have to follow rules. But I think the trying again and again, it only made them better at it, and they weren't punished for that. So I think that sort of tolerance for risk, for trying and then failing and trying again, and for us to sort of have a supportive network around those folks. We love that's why we support student entrepreneurs. Get your idea out there. If it doesn't work, then try another one. Who cares, So again, if you're following the rules, investors are made to take risks. Our money is, meant to address these risks. And that's just how it goes. We want to just see that talent pool strengthen and stay here.
Very good. I might turn to the crowd now, see if there's any questions that the crowd has. Andres?
I have a question that's probably mostly to Dr. Danielson and Mark. It's about, we talk about risk, and usually labs are very risk-averse. It's not the lab management only, but it's also the staff, right? I'm seeing that now actually with the collaborative research and development agreement that we try to get into place. And so we have the students, we have the postdocs that are ready. They have a time limit, right? They got to find something else. So then it's the right time to do this startup. But we have staff that would be ready to do the startup, but they are too afraid to leave the lab because you have a nice and stable job. And I think that's the problem with conflict of interest and getting the incentives to them. And there's also where the lab and the legal part becomes a little bit risk-averse, right? How do we make it happen that somebody can stay in the lab, work with the company, still benefit? I know that has multiple angles that are wrong, but there's a lot of people that would try it if they can't keep their foot in the safe lab.
I'd say broadly, as leadership, we need to redefine the mission of labs as loud and clear as we can. That we'd rather see the outcome of taking a little bit of risk, having a few failures, and having a couple of front-page negative stories over 10 years and change the world than have no negativity and not change the world. And so, but having been in government for 5 years after being venture capital, it's tough. It's tough because government is just, we're great Americans, we're skeptical of our government, we do like to throw rocks at our government, and so there's this intrinsic risk aversion that happens in government. So, one pathway is to lead and really try to just push hard and as to get leadership across the country to say we're going to take these risks, and when something goes wrong, we're going to own it. And we're going to point to the 25 successes we've had and return on investment, and we're going to come. Another complementary factor is we were talking about this morning is get the hell out of government, right? So let's create more of these nonprofit incubators and other things where people can go and be safe. And that if failures are had, they're kind of private sector failures, which are much more tolerable culturally and from a news perspective than in the public sector. But then specifically, I think entrepreneurial lead policy is something that I'm seeing bottom-up innovation in the national labs. DOE hasn't kind of top-down innovated yet, but there's enough room for innovation for the labs to take risks. At the Oak Ridge National Lab, technology was invented to convert ethanol, a catalyst to turn ethanol into gasoline. And the inventor was a very senior leader at the lab. They figured out a way to openly compete the opportunity to license the technology, and had a kind of an independent board, evaluate which of these teams was the best in the interest of the taxpayer in the country to take this technology forward. And the team that won was the Oak Ridge National Lab inventor. And now that person, they found that they defined a very clear conflict of interest regime, where that person is actually a co-founder and equity holder in a startup. I think another idea that I'd like to work on going forward is this entrepreneurial leave policy, where in some cases the labs are innovating, they're allowing you, you have a job. You go out for 2 years, they'll maybe cover your health care or something like that, some minimal expenses, enough money for you to eat McDonald's every day or something like that. And then there will be a job for you when you come back. But then I've heard a big barrier is then you have to rebuild your funding base from scratch. So is there a way that DOE could incentivize this, that if you go out and do this, for at least 20 researchers a year, we're going to give you a pot of money to come back to that's going to kickstart you again. So I think we're really open to those ideas. We need you to bring them to us. Mark, do you have any thoughts?
Just to build on it, thanks. Great. That was pretty much the right answer. I think we've got to come up with specific examples of where we think we can start to enable this behavior, because we've got a lot of top-level support. And I would also say that Argonne needs to learn from other labs. They mentioned the Oak Ridge example. I'm familiar with Berkeley, for example. Berkeley does, partly because they've sat in this different ecosystem that we're just now starting to grow into. They've got a different culture, and there, for example, conflict of interest, they manage it very proactively. They have an office that just manages that, because they're much more in the mode of, if you count up their startups versus ours, it's pretty humbling, actually.
Like half the biofuels companies you've heard of came out of Lawrenceburg.
Yeah, and with another senior official, by the way, having a lot of pretty hairy conflict issues, and he's out there. So at the bottom line is, I think there's more that we can do as a lab for process, and also the lab's comparing, I think, processes, so that then we get to where, but again, there's some low-hanging fruit where we can try to go after some of this stuff, and I know we have cover. That's not to say that, the legal machine that we deal with won't necessarily have issues, but we got to make it.
I want to jump in though, just to give you the entrepreneur's perspective on this, because I do think I completely agree that we need to incentivize people in the labs in the right way, but I also think it's important to just understand that you need to have existential crises every day to make it as an entrepreneur. So if you are guaranteed a job in 2 years, are you going to be hungry and motivated and have a drive to actually get to where you want to be?
That doesn't exist anywhere else in the world.
Right. I'll tell you, I'm skeptical, right? Because I wake up and sleep, and all I think about is my company, and that I have 14 people of payroll that I have to meet in a year. And if you don't have that because you're guaranteed a job at Argonne in 2 years, I will tell you right now, you're not going to make it. Because you just won't go out there and beat down the doors you need to beat. So we have to find that balance.
What we're modeling for the balance is the tenured faculty members that are successful entrepreneurial spin-offs. So you look at Bob Weber, you look at John Rogers at UIUC, Chad Merkin. They have a knack for understanding what the market needs, and they build whole labs, and VCs flock around them. And what can we learn from them? They are tenured faculty members that stay on staff, but they spin off postdocs and MBAs and so on and so forth. We're trying to model for that. So there's this need. We did an interesting design study with an outside design firm, conducted ethnographies across 50 different individuals and innovators that we thought would come into this space and try to understand them and what the innovation pathway looks like within the University of Chicago. We identified it's a long, arduous process, and there are key barriers, some low-hanging fruit we could look at first. Is it easy to license technology from a university? We probably have some work to do there, and we can lower the barrier of friction. But the other is career promise. If I go and work on this, the issue of I'm scared, am I going to be rewarded? Will I be penalized? Can I take a year off? I think there is a balance. I think you need to look at best practices. Stanford does this on a normal basis. I can take a year off. I could be a tenured faculty member. I could come back. But the company started it and took off. So I think it's very much, I'm right in your camp. It's back against the wall. You've got to take on the world. That's what's going to make it. That to me is a differentiating characteristic. But could that be the PhD that worked for that PI Could it be the PhD that worked for that tenured faculty member? And to me, I think that's where we need to concentrate our energy.
I mean, I
Yes,
definitely.
in the back.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say.
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I take your point completely on the safety net part, but there's all the other aspect of funding is being say a postdoc does want to go out and explore. How do you pay for it?
Right.
That's an important thing actually, and so that's part of what I think Dave's alluding to is you could come up with mechanisms where you're not providing them safety net, you just give them a day a week.
Right.
To go out and do something, but they're pilot programs. So it's the details that are important to go.
In the back.
Thank you, Dan. I'm Saeed Al-Halaj. I'm Chairman Pulse Staff at IIT. David, this is a breath of fresh air. Thank you very much. But Mark, fight the fight, man. I'm with you. I met with Peter before he became Director of Shares. I think you're doing a great thing. One thing that you can help out quickly, and this I've been around this area for 15 years. When you're a startup, when you negotiate, I was a faculty at IIT. What made the difference for me to license my technology at IIT was the licensing agreement. I went through, with IIT as a private, I was able to get a deal where they get an equity, no payment, no milestones, that because they understood the money doesn't come from the IP, it comes from me hiring students on. Now I'm at UIC, and I'm talking to Argonne, I know Khalil, I work with all these guys. Unbelievable technology. The conventionalism at the lab is to license to the DAOs, the ACF. What Amy said, startup. What you, Samir, startup. We don't have money. I cannot pay you $100,000 a year. I cannot maintain this. I can give you equity. Take risk with me. If an entrepreneur in Argonne wants to do that, or Samir's company want to license something from you, make it easy. And again, the money in IP licensing doesn't come from royalty, doesn't come from licensing, it comes from the people. And I think as government, this is a way for you to show it. Take risk, make it easy to license technology for small business. And don't, I'll be very honest, when Dow calls you, drop everything and tell. When I call, I say I'm wholesale. I know Peter, I know Cal, but they say, no, you're going to talk to the Office of Technology, and that's where it ended. Because I cannot pay $100,000 to just license. I cannot commit, because I don't know if I'm getting business next year. Right? So the licensing, make it equity, make it more like Silicon Valley, not just a traditional license.
Next.
Yeah, I guess along the similar lines, from what I'd like to ask, from the public sector and how we can integrate them. Of course, getting in this is along funding and public sector participation. And by the way, my name is Mike Archie. I'm a mid-career entrepreneur, so I'm struggling through this from the blue chip to being out on my own. I know what it's like about being back against the wall. What I'm thinking is the public sector can do a little bit better is one of the things that we need is demand. An entrepreneur needs demand, maybe not on the early cycle where you need to build your model, but those who are about to go out and is ready in commercialization, we need demand. And we might not have the scale that is able to compete on a RFP with the traditional material that they're having. Is there a source of, even if it is at 10%, 15% more than our traditional buy, it at least gives them an ability to get scale, ability to understand what they need to improve to get more efficiency, and obviously the hope is eventually they'll get their cost point down and they get environmental attributes with it.
Who wants to take that?
Well, one thing that we haven't talked about today that I think is a fact of the matter is that if you're and you guys are doing it, living it, is that many of us are inspired by and want to impact this energy problem. That's why we're here, right? Otherwise, we might be working on Snapchat selling or whatever. And so, but these are large commodity markets, and even when you do get the right policy in place, it's a delta. It's not you're going to get 10 times the price for the commodity that we're going to provide that has better attributes. And so almost every technology we see today that's out there in clean energy in a big way started in another high-value niche market. And so I think that every entrepreneur doing a really hardcore physical technology that ultimately will and can change the world in a huge way, you have to start in other applications. For example, solar power started on satellites, right? Where you pay $100 a watt or more, and then it got in off-grid applications, and now it's getting on-grid. And so I think the same thing with batteries, right? So it started in very high-end military applications, got into our phones, and now it's getting into our vehicles. The same with carbon fiber composites starts in high-performance aircraft, golf clubs, and then now it's going to get into the BMW, I agree, and now and then 10 years from now it'll be everywhere. And so that first market adoption is something I think that we have to be really laser focused on with any clean energy application. That's one point that I would make in the space that you're talking about.
I want to wedge in there policy. Okay, so because that is so important to what Mike is talking about. And, Dr. Danielson mentioned how some of the solar and wind is becoming competitive without subsidies. When you're launching a new technology, you do need some help. And we, Clean Energy Trust, we started out just focusing on innovation, and then we learned we absolutely had to weigh in on policy because market-making policy, especially for the young companies, there's nobody who has a voice for the little entrepreneurs. And we'll tell you that all the elected officials really want to hear from you guys. Because again, you guys are creating all the net new jobs. So they want to know who are these entrepreneurs, these small companies. We want to know, how to support them. And I think even, renewable portfolio standards, which speed the adoption of renewable energy in a state, are really, really critical. So we have a RPS of 25% renewables by 2025. We're not advancing fast enough towards that goal because the legislation that's needed to fix this, to unlock pools of funding that are sitting at the state level to actually, affect the procurement, need to have a vote by the legislators. And so whether you like it or not, you young companies, you kind of need to weigh in on this stuff. And that's like one of the messages we have for our startups. Like, please, connect with us, connect with whoever are your elected officials, and say what you need in order to be successful. And the money piece is not going to be the thing that they can solve, just like what you said about Boeing, but a policy that helps you guys get this to market faster is absolutely something that the elected officials should be thinking about at the state and the federal levels. And and then that will go away over time. All these things should sunset. But the traditional fossil industry have had tremendous support and subsidies for over 30 years, and they're highly profitable. So it's not fair. It is not a level playing field, and we need a level playing field so that these really important technologies that are going to help everyone can be adopted at the state level and the federal level more quickly.
Excellent point.
And I'd also just say that I've had more success at the county, city, and state level because they can move a little faster, because it is hard for the federal government to change procurement laws. They can barely pass a bill in Congress. So I think that's where you can have success.
And Samir, I think the city of Chicago is an unbelievable asset in its infrastructure and its demand that they could maybe share a little bit differently than just giving grants.
Yeah, they're just a little bit resource constrained. So it's hard to get a lot of dollars out of it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not asking.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're spending $1 on gasoline, can they spend $1.05 on this other new energy, and that 5 cents is instead of it's throughput.
They can enable it, no doubt. In our experience, it's not a place to go get a lot of funding.
Not handouts. Demand is only displacing existing.
Two more questions. Go ahead.
My name is Mark. I work with the Chicago Positive Initiative. We make carbon fiber car parts in Chicago and different things. We're the only group that we know of in Chicago that does it. We have car parts at this year's SEMA Auto Show. So new Lamborghini Huracan, only 5 in the country. We have one of them work on. So what I want to know is, what are these groups doing to approach street people who need work? So I work with different groups like the Land Reserve Initiative in the southeast side of Chicago to just get back jobs in the old steel industry, making stuff. So we have the ability to make onesies, twosies, and stuff. But how do you get out to the area to a new wind turbine that's really slick, or making it scalable? I guess about that, or about technologies. What are you doing to get on the street to help the local fellas to make things rather than shipping it out east far east? Things like that, things like helping job development.
I can start just by saying, I think creating the ecosystem, which we're doing, to attract, entrepreneurs and companies that need to be near the things that are happening in that ecosystem. I was on the phone yesterday with a company that's seriously considering relocating their manufacturing operation with the news, that this is blocking. We've always been well known as a manufacturing center, but now advanced manufacturing and our convergence with the national labs in energy. So they were very interested in looking at Illinois as a place where they could locate their operation. And those are going to be, if they did, and I'm not saying that they will, but because we're going to be competing with other parts of the country to try to bring that group here. But it's an example of people starting to poke around saying, is this a good place for me? And they're saying it would be a good place to be, and these would create jobs all across the scale. But I think you have to start with where we are, which is the ecosystem that starts to attract the talent and the capital and the companies, and then the other jobs that go with that start to roll along with it. That would be my quick answer.
Can I make one other point building on that? Specifically with batteries, that's what we're living, and we're starting to see it because the lab and the universities, Clean Energy Trust, the partner set, you have to engage the whole value chain. And so it's in progress. We have a long way to go. But you start to be, when you engage the entire value chain, starting from, say, a research idea, ultimately you can get to where you're actually accessing a lot of what we're talking about. But it's a work in progress.
But I'd also say that I think that at the component level, you're never going to compete because you're talking about $1 an hour a wage versus 15. So you just can't compete at that level. So I go back to what Dr. Danielson said at the beginning, which is if you go via the systems approach and you cut out the middlemen doing the markups, then you can maybe make the carbon fiber composite here, control the end application, and charge a competitive price, but provide that system. Because I think at the unit level, it will be virtually impossible to compete.
Carbon fiber, but for us, for the way we see it, is a lot of it is tucked away in big industry, either in the Far East. I used to actually sell rowing boats made of carbon fiber in China, here in the U.S., and the issues that I learned, drive me about trying to get these things made here in the United States because I know they can be made better here, quicker, with more attention to detail. In addition, less costs going away, and all these different things. But it's finding the issues. There's violence in Chicago, down the block from here, and there are issues about new jobs, foreclosed homes, and things like that. So getting away from here's an idea, kind of like an app, ship it out somewhere, and they manufacture it, comes, we can sell it. It's going from the start to say we can tackle this area, and the guys on the block who are on the job, we can also have them sand all day or lay out material or whatever it is, and from the start, not think that way ahead of time. That's kind of what we do is just how do we create jobs? How do we get more jobs for guys and less kids on the streets, more things to do like carbon fiber. Boeing making these great, cool-looking planes, making it more of a way to understand that these kids can get out of high school and say, I'm going to go to college and get a real degree to be an engineer to work for Boeing, but they might not know that until they get out of their area. So that's
your point's taken. I mean, forums like this and places like this are part of that.
But this is something that I'm actually looking to stand up a center at one of the national laboratories to really do clean energy manufacturing strategic analysis. We started to do it to some extent where, at least in solar and batteries, we know exactly what the cost structure is for every part of the value chain in all the important countries and regions. And so, we're able to map out, certain parts of the value chain are always going to be near where the customer is. It's just either it's heavy or there are a number of reasons why that can occur. And then other parts of the value chain are, like, let's say it's very light and very high value. You can make it wherever. It's not a real issue. So, like Amy said, in some areas, if you want more jobs in a certain part of the value chain, you need more demand. In other parts, we can decouple. I think that's particularly exciting because most of the demand for all these products is going to be overseas. And so we've identified some strategic areas like wide bandgap semiconductors for power electronics, carbon fiber composites, which are areas where they're platform technologies, they're hard to reverse engineer, and they also introduce completely new system design paradigms. That you would totally design your tractor differently, or you totally design your transformer differently, or you totally design your aircraft differently by virtue of this technology. Same with carbon fiber composites, right? Like the average engineer who knows how to make a metal part doesn't know how to deal with asymmetrical properties and those kind of things. And so I think if we can establish leadership in those areas at critical inflection points, then that'll be sticky for a while. And so I think we need to continue to identify those platform technologies and double down on investing in those areas. And we're actually doing that through the President's National Network for Manufacturing Innovation, where $70 million investment here on digital manufacturing in Chicago through DoD. We did a $70 million investment in wide bandgap power electronics manufacturing, and we're about to do another one in carbon fiber composites.
Last question.
Hi, my name is Joe Koenig, and I've been on public relations committees for Make Ideas Reality in Patients. I actually worked for Ford Motor Company for a long time on environmental initiatives, manufacturing initiatives, and was the head of communications for SEMA for the Specialty Equipment Market Association in Las Vegas for quite a while. But I kind of want to tie back to your theme. The question I have is, and you've touched on so many different, industries and areas, but what is the future of, what is the future of clean energy in the Midwest? Get out your crystal ball. What are, for startups, give advice for startups. What types of areas can they focus on to build a business? Let's think maybe 5, 10, 20, 50 years from now. What do you envision? You've mentioned quite a few different things already, though. But.
So let's do a wrap up, and if each person could give 30 to 45 seconds crystal ball. Go ahead.
I would put kind of advanced. The Charles genome concept is like how do you take high performance computing, advanced modeling simulation, high throughput synthesis, high throughput characterization to dramatically accelerate the rate at which you discover new materials and get them to manufactured parts. I think it's a very exciting area. The idea of quote-unquote smart systems or smart manufacturing, bringing, IT has gone to the consumer internet like crazy. It has not gotten into our manufacturing to the extent that it could. I think there's a huge opportunity there. Advanced sensors, controls, real-time model-based simulation and control are a couple areas. The future grid, the bottom-up grid. If you have super cheap solar, super cheap LEDs, super cheap batteries, solid-state transformer, the internet router for the grid, how is Africa going to build out? And how could you make $1 billion by providing them the services that would be the least cost solution for them electrifying themselves?
Those were all really good things. I will just say that we are super excited about storage infiltrating every aspect of our lives. So from devices to cars to buildings to the grid into unknown applications, I think we're very bullish about that. And I would probably get punished from my marketing manager if I didn't mention that we're launching our Clean Energy Challenge next week. So we'll be receiving applications starting on Monday. And we're launching it the same day that we are awarding $1 million for the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. So talk to Emily or talk to me or go onto our website to find out more information about it.
So yes. So I'll bring up something different. Let's say data-intensive problems. And this is a systems of systems thing. Smart city buildings. The platform is modeling, simulation, analytics, visualization, everything from very advanced down to allowing a decision maker to actually make a decision. That stuff is ongoing, but to me, that fits into future grid, it fits into future cities, it fits into resilient systems, all kinds of things. And I think there's a tremendous amount of innovation that can happen in that space. And I think there's probably business models in there for folks to provide not just services, but developing products.
Samir?
I think you'll see new financing models appear. I think you'll see entrepreneurs possibly exiting earlier instead of trying to go raise a Series D, E, and F round to run their company. And I think you'll start seeing large corporates who see the long-term strategic value in this very long-term market step in earlier and make acquisitions.
I would say that the interesting thing about this type of energy is that it's variable. And given the fact that it's variable in its ability to produce and it's variable in how it gets consumed, that storage is key, right? So that's the big grow item is when you're smart, you've got to be able to store it. I think that the second thing is because it's interactive and control, I think that from a cyber perspective and a security perspective, there's significant opportunities to figure out, we obviously can't make an IP-based control, right? It's just not secure. So there's another layer, a new protocol that's required to handle the Internet of Things. And I think energy is, because of its danger, if your app crashes, it's not a big deal, but if what you're controlling is your car crashes and it's hooked up with 10 or 15 other cars, we got a problem. So I think there's significant areas for research and development and IP in the area of controlling all this stuff in a real secure way.
Can I get a round of applause for the panelists? Thank you all for coming. You're welcome to remain for refreshments and tour the rest of the space if you'd like to. Thanks for being here today. Thank you.